Welcome to the Crazy Wisdom Podcast. My guest today is Iku Podar, and he is a developer. And it's the second time we've talked. Last time we had a really interesting talk about generative biology and a whole bunch of other stuff, and we've been talking about other things in the meantime. And would love to go into DARPA. I've been reading a book about DARPA. Welcome to the show again.
Mhm. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So should we jump right into the DARPA stuff? DARPA stuff is so interesting because I have been reading this book called The Imagineers of War, which is about how DARPA got started. And DARPA got started because the Russians released Sputnik into the atmosphere or the into space. And the US was like, oh shit, we got to get our stuff together. And so they like started ARPA
Yeah.
with the intention of it being the space thing. But then Eisenhower, knowing the problem with the industrial military complex, wanted a space administration that was civilian based. And so then NASA started, and then ARPA was left without a mandate. And but for they were still an institution, so they had to do something. And so then they bounced around to a lot of different projects, including going to Vietnam. And most of the stuff that people pin on the Air Force or the Army, most of the crazy stuff that happened, a lot of the crazy stuff, not most of the crazy stuff, happened with the direct participation of ARPA. And then during that time, they started the internet, not necessarily as a way to it was because they had computers like the Sage computers that were trying to find the bombers from the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union, could have sent bombers. And so that's the way that they did computation. And then J.C. Licklider came in and started going into the universities and basically establishing the internet as a way to communicate in case Russia did send a bunch of bombers or ICBMs and stuff. But it wasn't specifically to get a redundant network. There's some nuance there, which I'm not totally remembering. But what have you learned about DARPA in the last few months?
So I think I think most of the stuff I've been doing guess work wise has been because of DARPA. So I think it started because of for example the internet. JC or I think he was like an experimental psychologist,
Yeah.
but then he became like a person interested in like network computers and ARPANET created like the first I guess internet like connecting a bunch of like computers together, and that's what we have like the internet now. And they started like the PC revolution too. And yeah, so basically like a lot of the technologies that we have right now, you could like trace it back to um DARPA. They even like created like Siri. So it's
Wait,
like
wait.
it's like yeah.
Siri, where does that come in? Because I remember it was like 2006, 2007 that Siri came around. So they were already doing Siri.
Yeah, so they created like the prototype for Siri as like a personal assistant. Then they worked they worked with Apple, but then they give it to Apple, and Apple just like iterated on it.
Really interesting. Um,
Yeah.
and so they were working with Apple. So they work with all this is the hardest thing for me to understand about the US government the way it is they have all these agencies and the agencies like either directly work with, as we've seen with Facebook and Twitter recently, or just talk, like just establish relationships. It's the way the federal government does lobbying and stuff like that. That's just how it works, is that they all talk to each other. And when there's a powerful thing that grows, then they just start communicating basically. Is that right?
Like I have like a different take on it.
Uh-huh.
So for me, so for example, so like I used to like work in like cloud, so like Oracle Cloud, and I know like a lot of one of the biggest customer is like the U.S. government
Yeah.
because like they needed to operate um the cloud, and like if you look at like all the cloud, AWS, Google Cloud, they're they're like a lot of like data centers like and
Yeah.
I think like Arlington, in Virginia, because of like the CIA and the FBI is right there. So one of the government's biggest customer has to be like big tech all the time. And I think like if you trace that to like every society, like the military and technology and the government are always like intertwined. So yeah, even like to like go back to like the Roman Empire, it collapsed because of the innovation and like canon. So yeah. So the reason why like it fell apart, the business it fell apart is because like innovation and like the first cannon that could blow the wall and is it I think like Constantinople. Maybe I didn't get it right, but I guess like technological innovation and big industry and government are always like intertwined. I think like there's like a clip of Eisenhower warning about it,
Yeah,
but I think like
it's
I
always the way
think
it
for
works.
some yeah, because the government wants super power, and super power you need like the most sophisticated technology, and that causes them to like invest in like scientists who are developing new technologies.
Yeah, and so the point you made about the cannon, so it was the Turkish. Is that the reason Constantinople fell is because the Turkish had the cannon?
Yeah,
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah.
Interesting.
Uh,
Now,
but
you go
for
for it.
that, like I guess like gunpowder was like it wasn't new, but like I think like Mehmed the second was a person that perfected the cannon that like, brought the Roman Empire to its feet. So like I think like if you learn history, like every empire has to like always invest in technology because like if it isn't, it could be obsolete. Like for example, like the Dutch, they innovating like ships and they became like the biggest empire. Yeah.
Hmm.
So it's always like connected.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always connected, but the nobody talks about it, right? Like I nobody no and maybe it's because they're in it and they're profiting off of it. Maybe it's the sort of or they're scared of talking about it. Or like, do you agree that nobody talks about it? Or they just they never make connections to political ongoings or ideological ongoings, particularly with the way the political atmosphere has gone recently because it is like the neoliberals now control government currently. And those neoliberals are very much aligned with the military, but they never talk about the military, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I guess like they don't I guess I could like talk about it from like a big tech perspective.
Yeah.
So like I work in big tech and like when big tech like when Google has like a government project, there's always like engineers like having backlash against them and it happens with like AWS and other clouds too. But the thing about it is like if you look at it from like an industry perspective, the government's probably like maybe 20 to 30% of like the purchases in the economy. For example, like it might be like an extreme example, but during World War II, like the US government ordered like Ford to like make tanks and like war weaponry because like it so the US could be like competitive. So like certain cases like it's like extreme, but like during war, the government can like tell industries to like focus on like certain technologies. So the big industry and government are always like intertwined.
Yeah, interesting. And there's just no separation. And okay, so and we can well, do you think that that's going to remain the case for technology as we move forward, or do you think that this sort of open because the open source feels like that's contrary, the whole open source vibe is sort of contrary, or do you think that there is a connection between the military industrial complex and open source?
So for open source, um, I think that for open source, like most of the time, if it's like it depends. Like if it's like a democratic like country or like republic like the US, then it might like favor like decentralized technologies because it values
Yes.
it individual autonomy. But like if it's like China or like a communist country or dictatorship, they might like favor centralized type of organizations. So that might lead them to like have like a different form of like social organization. So the US, I think the deep tech research is like decentralized and centralized systems.
Yes.
Like the internet is like both centralized and decentralized. Like you using a personal PC, you could like customize it, but then it's also centralized because you like the ISP providers know a lot about you. You could
Yes.
like try to like yeah, so it's like a combination of both. But the US is like a good mix between both. But if you look at like
China is the opposite. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So and Russia maybe somewhere in between China and the United States, and then I wonder what the Saudi Arabia and all the Middle Eastern countries. I wonder what how they play into it as well. But so yeah, it's a really good point you made here, which is that it's a combination of both centralized and decentralized. And DARPA, as we were talking about on Twitter, essentially DARPA releases the technology, they open source it, right? Because that's what they did with the internet. That's what they went into the schools. There's a strong linkage between the universities and DARPA, and so they basically release some of it, but they release it strategically.
Yeah, so I guess like um the way they would work is like if you like join DARPA you have like maybe 3 or 4 years to like try to perfect the technology, and I guess a lot of the time after the term the project manager at DARPA's term is finished, since they've been working on it, they know most about it, so they like spin off and then use that technology to build a company. That's why that's
Yeah.
why like there's always like a connection between like what DARPA is doing 20 years ago and the new technology companies in Silicon Valley like now.
Yeah, interesting. And it's wrapped up with the universities too. What do you think about big science? We might kind of take a detour because there's big science. I mean, I've been aware of scientism, but I didn't realize that scientism is almost a byproduct of big science. And I'll explain it for my listeners. We have little science, everything before the discovery of the atom and the electron using Ernest Rutherford. Ernest Rutherford found the atom and the electron because he had a gold plate, and then he would send radioactive particles against the gold plate, and then he would measure how many of them came back and how many passed through the gold plate, showing that the gold plate was mostly empty space unless it hit off an atom and then it would bounce back. And so that experiment, he was able to do that experiment without these large investments in billions of dollars in CERN and other things that basically does energy particle smashing small particles together and like finding what the fabric of the universe. And that also led to the nuclear reactors. And then you get big science. And the only way to do real science now is to go to university, ally with a large research organization, and basically fit into a group mind that, from my understanding, led us directly to what COVID happened, which like just total like scientism, like not like there was a clear conflict of interest and the scientists failed their duty to pursue truth because of this big science type of thing. Do you think that little science is possible in the future, or do you think it's just going to continue on as it has, or are we in for a change to science? What do you think about that?
Like I guess like I have like a little bit of a different take
Sure.
than so I guess like if you like look at the history of science or like technology, like the it, and the like um so the first technologies were like technologies that were like simple.
Yeah.
For example, if you use like biology, for example,
Yeah.
so like when Mendel was discovering the pea, when Gregor Mendel was doing like the pea experiment,
Yeah. Yeah.
of
Yeah.
course, he could like do it in his backyard because like all he needed is like a garden. But like if you're looking deep inside like the mitochondria or like you're doing like some stem cell research, you need like equipment that costs like thousands of dollars
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then or millions of dollars
Yeah.
because early on we saw like the low hanging fruit of science, but like now we have to like solve the hardest problems, which requires like a team of like people that come from like different industries or like different fields working together to create like an end product. So like the problems are becoming more complicated. So big institutions are now like the people that are doing more science because everything else that's like simple, someone probably like figured it out now already. So now it's like I think like there you go. Someone won like the Nobel Prize for like mRNA, the micro one, and uh, like he did it like inside a university because like even if he tries to like do it by himself, like in his own lab, the equipment cost will be like it's probably like
Yeah.
hundreds of thousands to like
Yeah.
millions for him to like just start to experiment on it. So as the complexity of the problem increase, bigger institutions like companies or like government agencies have to do more research in the future the because the problems are getting more complicated.
Yeah, yeah, okay, I get what you're saying. It's basically there's multiple components. There's the specialized equipment, then there's the specialized knowledge, then there's the funding. And that
Yeah,
funding piece, that feels like the relationship to big science that's related to the what we were talking about earlier about the government. The government's going to be involved with that. In one sense, the government has always been involved with it, but before the process of new engineering was probably separate from technology. So like, the nuclear bomb, that was probably the first time where, okay, now we understand the process that leads to these revolutionary technologies. We need to own that fully. Whereas probably the cannon was like some guy in Turkey, like messing around with stuff. Like it probably wasn't as intentional. Whereas something happened where all of a sudden now you have the specialized machinery, the specialized knowledge, and the fundings, and the sort of networks, the social networks. That's what it is. The social networks of people but that has created this sort of negative externality of the groupthink, which is opposed to the old science, the chaos science, right? Like the unintentional. We could get into that, but also I want to ask you about the specialized knowledge required and whether AI can change that, because now we have the specialized knowledge inside of the AI, and me, on myself, I can go learn about quantum mechanics to a pretty good degree, and I can go find the documents and I can get the thing to teach me how to do it. But I might be sort of overly optimistic in my own skills to in that particular range. What do you think of the effect on AI there?
um, yeah. So like, um, and so like in the future, if we like a team of people to do research, like you could maybe in 5 years you could like use the AI agent to do like research, like you could like fine tune them or like make them specific to like solve a particular problem and like connect them together to solve a problem. But I think like that's the optimistic part. Like I'm optimistic that that will happen, but like also like you still need like human expertise because like um for two reasons. Because like if like the AI agent models are doing something like complicated and like no one understands it, that might lead to like negative externalities because uh, yeah, it'll lead like to like negative externalities. Like maybe if like I think like the one example that you've already used is like what if they make like a financial product that's like so complicated and they create something like 2008 over again. That's like one. And then like the like the other yeah, that's the main one. Like because because of like over time society is becoming more complicated and then AI is gonna like AI and algorithms are gonna like run society at some point. Like if we don't enhance ourselves, then we won't understand like the complexity of the society.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
going to happen. That's going to happen. The same problem we're facing right now. But how do you so one idea I just got was that we need a new type of university. A new type of university that isn't kind of captured in the way that a lot of the current ones are, in terms of like only focusing on the details of like how do you connect the detail to the whole, which leads into what you just said, which is the issue at hand is that people are not paying attention to the whole anymore, and they're only paying attention to the details, and then we get stuck with something like 2007, 2008. But it's almost like you need a cultural change, and you need a new sort of intellectual class as well who's able to understand a lot of this stuff, because most people couldn't give a shit about all the subprime mortgage crisis, like that whole, like nobody cares anymore. They like, And so we need people who do understand this stuff and who value understanding it, because the people who are designing the AI, they all talk about ethics, but man, I do not trust that they are actually concerned with the real ethics of the situation. Is how do you connect this little piece to the giant whole? They're all like stuck in their own ideologies because of these negative externalities of funding and everything like that. If you agree with that, or if you disagree with that, please let me know. But what do you think about that?
But yeah, I think like I think like from like two perspectives, that's like true, and also like I guess like Western societies like focus on individuality,
Yeah.
and then and then like Eastern is like more of like looking at the whole, and
Yeah.
then also like as like I guess as society becomes more complicated, one way we deal with it is like we fragment it into like experts. So like before maybe people are like generalists, but now like we're like all specialized in one thing because of like I guess economics.
Yeah.
If everyone does something different, then collectively we all benefit. But the
Yeah.
result of that is like that we like fragment into like pieces where no one has like collective knowledge, and also like it's more complex now. You could like look at the Middle Ages and see like, oh, there was like Renaissance people like Euler or like maybe Leonardo da Vinci, but like but tasks that they were working on back then, it's probably like more simple than like what someone, for example, if it's more simple than someone studying like maybe ALAG or like quantum physics right now. Because like just for you to do some specialized fields right now, you just need like so much years of schooling.
But that's cool. That schooling piece is going to change because AI is going to change that somehow. Because there is going to be, right, it's already happened with programming, but this might
Yeah.
be get into what you're talking about, the negative externalities. Well, let's go into the programming example totally, because now I've already created applications using generative AI to code for me. I figured out all these hacks and ways to get it to build something. I don't understand 80% of what it's giving me. And so, and I think a hacker came in and I created a photo app, and I think a hacker came in and took all the photos, or maybe it was a LLM training thing that came in and took all my photos. But like, so there are those things that happen, and so it's much more likely that there will be a security vulnerability in the thing that I create. Uh, Regardless, then the other part is that there's all these pieces within programming where that, like, if I use Supabase right, Supabase will handle all of that, most of that security stuff, right? And so there's these pieces that make it all easier, and so the infrastructure of coding is going to change that. Let's now apply that to biology or chemistry. There might not be a direct relationship between those things because software is so abstract, it's so in the computer, whereas but biology also, it's the whole inductionism versus deductive as well. I forget which one it is, but one starts with the general premises and then defines based on that, and the other one builds up. So it's like top down versus bottom up. And this is how a lot of biology now gets done. It gets done on the model. There's not as much empirical like investigation.
Mhm.
And so going into the biology and the chemistry and the physics, how do you think that the AI is going to change all those things?
Yeah, so I think like right now we have like generative AI, and it's basically just doing like maybe IT type of work, and then like maybe like white collar type of work. But like in the future, it's gonna like go into like other disciplines. So I've been like just researching the field. So like there's like generative like you could apply generative AI to like molecules. So you could like generate like new molecules, and then like if you look at like the alpha fold stuff,
Mm-hmm.
how like I guess like DeepMind just solve all protein folding problem like they solve like 200 million, and then like you could like also generate like proteins. So like the combination of both is gonna enable us to like generate like maybe new type of carriers and then like new materials. But I think like right now we have like all the pieces. For example, like generative like proteins. We have like since DeepMind discovered our the
Yeah.
protein. Now the problem is like um discovering like how the collagen of proteins interconnect, like how they interact with each other. So like a network of protein, how they interact to produce a certain outcome in a biological
Oh.
system.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's gonna, and this is the craziest thing for me because with this show, instead of specializing with this show, I decided to not specialize, which told me everybody told me not to do because you got to specialize, and they've been telling me that for but the entire time I've been existing. But I'm seeing that where the human kind of is really the most valuable, and now that AI is here, is connecting dots, right? And there's the whole cliche of Steve Jobs where you got to connect the dots and everything like that. Uh, and so connecting dots, we human beings can connect dots better than the machine. But what you just said made me think, okay, it's going to connect the dots as well. So it does have it because when you're speaking with AI, it's not just an expert in biology more than I am. It's also more of an expert in chemistry than I am, and in physics than I am, and what you just said made me think that it's also going to connect the fields together. But again, it goes back to how much we trust it, and it's subtle. It's so subtle because yes, it's right in the facts and everything like that. But well, there's a good question for you. Do you trust it to connect dots better than human beings can connect dots?
Yeah. So I have like several ways to go about it. So I guess so like the way AI connects dots, you just said that it might like not it might be even if it's like at the same level as us, it can like go for example like if you use a chess analogy, like I like the best chess engine I think it's called like Stockfish. The is like ranking it's better than like Carlsen ranking by like a few thousand points because it can like brute force through all the possible solution. But like we don't brute force.
Yeah, yeah,
The way we make decisions if we have like a big sample space is like we use like our intuition and like I
yeah.
guess like we evolve that because like every seconds. I think there's probably like 11 million bits of information like coming into like our brain every second. But like we can't use all of them. So like our short-term memory compresses that into like maybe 7 to 8 or 9 bits of information that we like hold in our memory at a time. But like the thing about it is when I'm if you're using your intuition, you have to like train it, but like even if you train it, it can still be wrong. That's why like even experts could be wrong because they're it, so if you're using like, intuition, you're probably like using something like a linear regression, linear regression about a sample space, and you're trying to like cluster it into like maybe like a sigmoid type of function. Does this happen or does this not happen? But like since you don't know about every possible combination, then you might like get something wrong. But like the AI, if we if they implement something like the multicolor tree search, which makes it like go through all the combination, then like it's probably gonna be more accurate than like humans in the future.
Multipolar tree search, is that what you said?
Oh no, Monte Carlo tree
Mon
search.
Monte
Yeah, is it
Carlo tree search. Monte Carlo tree search. Okay. And what does Monte Carlo tree search, unless we implement that, what happens when we implement Monte Carlo tree search?
so, so is it's basically like what it does is like um I don't know if you know what a tree is in like comparison to just like a data structure with like one node at the top. It's kind of like a family where you have like a parent, and then like multiple kids, and then their kids could have multiple kids.
Got
It's
it.
like when you try to like find who's this person, it goes from like the top node all the way to like the bottom node and finds like the information. but while it's going to the tree of node, it gets information to filter out its decisions. So it's like more accurate, but it's like faster because
Yeah,
computers make
interesting.
decisions. Yeah.
And AI does not do tree search very well. That's somebody who told me that. I'm not sure about that. Is that true that generative AI does not do tree search very well?
Like I'm not sure. I think like it does research really well,
Uh,
but it's just like right now, um, maybe DeepMind and like
hmm.
um OpenAI, they're figuring how to like implement it. So like the new O1 model, I think like it does something like that. Yeah, it uses like mental quality research, something like that, and has like multiple choices, and then like tests the choice that's like more accurate and gives it back to you. That's why it has like weight. And it's kind of like similar to like the way we think about stuff.
How so?
Because so for example, if I'm like eh, so I, for example, like if you're doing coding, I think there's a website called like LeetCode,
Yeah.
and every problem has like multiple solutions. You could like if you're trying to like do as fast as possible, you might just like take the worst solution. But if you're trying to like optimize it, you might pick the best solution. So if you know like all complexity in computer science, for like maybe there's a problem called twosome where if you have a list, you try to like see which two inputs in the array equals to the target sum. You can use two for loops to go to the array, and the complexity will be n squared. It's not efficient because like if you have more input, the time it takes increases dramatically. But if you use like a hash map to store the keys, it's like linear time, so like n, so it's like faster than like the n squared.
You just
Yeah,
went right into a mathematical understanding that I want to build, but I'm not there yet. One day I'm going to find my tutor. I thought I found a tutor, but she canceled on me. Um, uh, so uh, so tree search, Monte Carlo. Let's take another 15 minutes. I have to go to the airport. I'm going to go fly to I think I should fly to close to you, but only for a layover, and then head on to California back to go see what's going on in San Francisco. Let's go into AI and generative AI and almost like the I want to go into like the political stuff, not to get political, but to understand where we're headed in terms of the accelerationism. Are you familiar with the philosophical background of accelerationism and Nick Land? Are you familiar with those guys?
yeah. So I'm familiar with like the acceleration movement. Like it's like Nick Lane, the person that wrote like the biology book about like how biology processes information. I think I read it, but like yeah, yeah, I'm familiar with it.
So yeah, and his whole thing in accelerationism is based off of Land's idea, which is that capital is almost like the original form of artificial intelligence in the way that it, mediated merchants to go find value. And so you have these corporate enterprise structures that basically were artificial intelligence. And if you take the human out of it, you can kind of see that proto-artificial intelligence. And now we have artificial intelligence, and his whole thing is that it's not aligned with human goals. And it's funny because the accelerationist is right coded. They're conservatives, right? It feels like a very conservative thing. People who are pro it, but it's like the opposite of conservatism, traditional conservatism, because traditional conservatives like to try to conserve what we have against the onslaught of technology. And now, for some strange reason, the conservatives are actually supporting the accelerationism. And Nick Land is like a Marxist who saw what was happening with technology and was like, okay, to get the human back into the center of this picture, we need to destroy capitalism by accelerating it. And so basically, so that we do a restart. And so now, as I'm headed back into California and San Francisco, I'm noticing that politically speaking, I know from the internet now, I haven't been there for a while, but I know it's possible that you can wear a Trump hat and walk around San Francisco without getting assaulted, which when I left it, that was like impossible. And so there's like a fissure that's going on. And it's kind of related to what we were talking about as well, because they're like, what's your take on this AI? Well, like politically, like what, like the map has been redrawn, and it feels very confusing for everyone involved. Are you confused by it? What's your take on the stuff going on now?
So like I think I think like the way I look at it is like I kind of look like like politics with like technology and like the way information flow in society. So
Mm,
like when we have like a tribal society, maybe you can only communicate with you don't really like communicate with like 150 people.
yeah, yeah,
That's what we get a number from. And then like after that we went into farming. So like after that after we went into farming, it created like a two-tier society where
yeah,
there was probably like a
yeah.
priest or a king and everyone else working the farm. So the shift from like that it changed like social organization. And then after that we went to like an industrial economy where people it created that created like another like multi-tier society where there's like the people that work in the factories and then like,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
people that own the factory.
yeah.
And now we're like in the information age. So now it's more about like how the people that like actually control society or the people that control like information network and
Mm,
like and like have a lot of data. So for me, I think like if you look at it, Elon Musk and like Mark, like the Facebook owner, they're probably like more powerful than the president.
yeah,
It's almost like the presidents are becoming like a figurehead. Like when we went from like the British monarchy to like the US system, the old people that used to rule that system, they became like a figurehead. I think
yeah,
that's the same thing that's gonna
yeah. Oh
happen
shit.
with like with the government. But the thing about it is like it's like not really clear because like we're not in that system yet. But
Yeah,
I think it's good
it's the beginning of it.
capitalism. Yeah, so capitalism and like the new form of social organization is gonna like emerge out of chaos that's happening right now. But we just don't know like how it's gonna be. It's
Mm,
gonna shift in the future. But for I think like probably if AI agents and if AI makes things cheaper, then like money will become less useful over time. But the thing about it is like uh, real estate and like hard assets are
mm.
still gonna be like, valuable. So it's gonna be like a quasi system between like capitalism and socialism that no one actually knows yet. And then for like the way society's like organized, I think like over time AIs will probably manage the society because like in
Mm.
we every field, as you go into like a senior position, you're like expected to like know more and have more skills. If you fast forward to, like maybe 20 years, AIs will surpass people
Yeah,
at everything.
yeah,
So like for example, like a philosophical thing, and I was like AIs could like outperform doctors at certain tasks, and then increasingly they're outperforming them. There's gonna become a day where it's like, do you? It's gonna be on the company side, insurance side, and like society side. Do you go with an AI doctor that's like more efficient, or like a human doctor that's like less efficient, just because you feel like talking to it? It's gonna be like really complicated because the way because insurance and like social institution
yeah.
are gonna be like if you pick this one, we'll charge you less. And if you pick this one, we'll like charge you more. So it's gonna become
Oh
like
man.
complicated.
And that's going to get into the whole, the whole reason why, the vaccination stuff was like, that was all predicated on this idea of, well, I won't take vaccination as the one because I'll say motorcycles. Motorcycles is the good example, or motorcycle helmets. You have to wear a motorcycle helmet because if you crash, it's not about you dying. It's about you being taken to the hospital and being taken care of by the administration and putting that the debt onto society itself. What
Yeah.
you just said is really interesting because that's going to play right into it as well in this really weird way. like the vaccine example is an example that I strongly disagree with because of the disincentives that we were talking about earlier and the big science stuff. But I'm not going to blanket that on every single use case. And in some ways, it might, like the AI might be superior. And this management piece that you talked about is really interesting. It only popped up in the last couple of weeks for me is thinking about like, oh shit, like I'm being managed by the AI. When I go and code, it's telling me what to do. And I'm telling it what to do in some ways, and then it's coming back and telling me to do it in different ways. And it's like if we extend that into the future, but it's never like the AI is in a relationship with me. So it's not necessarily that the AI is somewhere on its own autonomously doing thing, although that might happen. So there's always this relationship. So it's not managing in the structure, but humans might build structures that then bring in it as a management structure so that instead of a human manager, the AI becomes the manager, which is a really weird thought, but it might happen. But then there's the other part, which, going back to Elon Musk, it's the Neuralink, because his whole idea is that we're in an existential battle with this thing, which I kind of disagree with that's where it's headed. But his point is that we have to merge in order to survive. Um, and where last 5 minutes, what's your take on that?
Yeah, and so I think like over time, like yeah, so I think like yeah, over time we probably like have to like merge with it, but like if like if every technology like not everyone accepts it like right now, like Amish people or like we don't want your technology
Yeah.
like technology from society at all. So like over time, it's gonna be like people that um use AI to do work and then like use biotechnology to like modify themselves. And then there's gonna be people that like or just against it. But like over time, the people that like are more enhanced will like outcompete the people that
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
that are just like we don't want this technology at all. I think like it's probably gonna like split humanity. I think like before there were like six different type of um I guess human, and then over time the
Yeah.
rest of the human species sort of like disappearing. I think like the same thing will like happen this century or like maybe the next 2 centuries where like something new is gonna come out of the other end. It's gonna be like mixed between like biology and technology into something else, but have like we don't have like the imagination or like the concept for it. Like
Yeah, there's no way to think about it because it hasn't happened yet, and we can use imagination, but our imagination doesn't get us there because there's never been any um, historical examples that we know of. So the historical examples, and that's why sci-fi is so important to read because people, they've gone to the limits. But what I've noticed is that in the 1990s and the 1980s sci-fi, there is no representation of social media, and that social media like that like there are representations of the internet, but well, because the internet already existed, but the way the internet moved to social networks, nobody really saw that in a really profound, like high fidelity way. And I think this AI is going to surprise a lot of us. And this gets me to the point. It's just, I don't like in this ways, I am closer to the singularitarians, although I make fun of them a lot in the sense that like whatever we're headed in feels like a strong disconnect that no one is prepared for. Like a strong disconnect from what is going to happen to what previously happened. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Like that we have no historical representations of what we're headed for?
yeah, I don't think like we don't, and I guess like the thing about it is like um I saw like some called like this schematic of like information processing and replication in the biosphere. So like if you take it like from how like chemistry became like molecules and then molecules became like tissues and then tissues became organism, then like animals evolved and then like animals invented society and then invented AI. I
Yeah.
guess like if you look backwards, the thing before it couldn't predict the thing that came after it.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
feel
yeah,
like
yeah.
that's
Interesting. Yeah,
something
that's where
like
we're
that.
headed.
And yeah,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I guess the only difference this time is like since we're like we have consciousness and intelligence. We're gonna be like aware of like the next thing, which is gonna like
Yeah, we have the
yeah
imagination, which has never existed before. The imagination
yeah
part has never existed before. There were no historical examples of the imagination. And this is in the realm that we're playing in, because in a sense, it's like all of human civilization is imagination. It's just imagination that everybody's agreed on, like money. Money doesn't, a dog does not take my money. It doesn't make sense to the dog. And so AI is in the same realm. It's playing in the same realm. I can't see an AI. We're like, where is the AI? It doesn't exist except in our shared imagination, right? With the language stuff. So that seems where we're headed. Anything else on that topic you want to share?
um I mean I guess like I'll send you like a link of it after this, but it's like
Yeah.
interesting. So like I guess like when we move to like maybe a higher level of abstraction or like
Yeah.
into like combining. So it's actually like based off of like how information copies itself in a system. So like now the thing about AI is like before the cost of generating new information was like high from like maybe oral societies to like libraries to the print and press to like the internet. Now like with AI we're gonna like decrease the price of generating like new knowledge to
Yeah.
like almost zero,
God.
and we don't know like what's gonna happen after that.
Yeah, because it's the imagination thing. It's just like we have no way to predict because it's not the fact that they're creating a new imagination. It's the fact that they're making the cost of imagination go to zero, which already
Yeah,
like inside our body that already exists, but we just don't have the GPUs inside of our heads to make the cost because there is a cost. There is an energy cost to having imagination. Our brains are sort of linear, and this is bringing what yeah, this is a good question. I want to ask this question. If the AI can, during the transcript, I put all these things through the transcript. So if the AI, what part of the brains are linear and what part of the brains are nonlinear is a good question for further research. But I got to go get on my airplane. So thank you so much for coming on the show. And how can people find you?
you can like find me on like Twitter. Yeah.
On Twitter, and I'll put that in the show notes. I'll put where you can find it. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.